From the ABC 27 Storm Track Center, it's time to go beyond the forecast.
Well, season's greetings and welcome to our final installment of Beyond the Forecast for 2013. Brett and the rest of the crew will be along in a little bit, but tonight we're taking a behind-the-scenes look at the Storm Track Center and how we put together our forecast. You can see where we're going with this. Hi, Brett. How's it going over there?
Pretty good.
This is the Storm Track Center, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But, of course, because it's December, Eric and Dan will be here to talk about winter as well. Eric will look at the types of winter storms that affect Central PA, and Dan has a look at long-range forecast models, along with an in-depth look at weather watches and warnings. But we begin with Brett over at what we lovingly call the weather wall.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Ryan. And so often you see us here in the Storm Track Center with all these bells and whistles behind us. I promise you it's not just for show. For example, why do we have a pair of headsets on hand? Well, a little while back, Ryan recorded this look at some of the things you don't always see at home.
So we begin our tour actually in the bowels of the studio. We bring visitors whenever they visit the station around this bend, and their eyes kind of light up when they see the actual studio and all the bright lights that are involved in it. This is maybe looking a little bit more familiar to you. Our news set, you've got Good Day PA set back beyond that, and of course our green screen. We're going to talk about that more coming up in just a few more minutes. But even back here, you can see this is actually a little bit of a workspace for us. We do have lives beyond the weather, and we have some family photos, things like that over here. But I want to really talk about the Storm Track Weather Center and the things that you see behind us on any typical day. It is actually useful to us. We're not just messing around in here. Eric is here right now actually forecasting. We basically almost man this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And all these computers have meaning. This one up here, this is our TrueView alert system, and it actually, if you've ever seen severe thunderstorm warnings, tornado warnings scrolling across the top of the screen, they're coming out of this computer. It's monitoring for that 24 hours a day as well. This is our WeatherNet system. We can monitor all sorts of weather stations at schools, real-time data all around the region, as well as cameras. We've got 70 weather stations, over 30 cameras throughout the region, and this is very useful data to help not only for us to see what type of weather is going on, but to forecast it and show you at home. You can tap into that data on our website. This is just a big honking TV that helps us to tell our weather story better. But let me slide you over to what we call the weather wall. Up top, you've got the ABC 27 feed. That's what you see at home. We see it right there on the top screen. The middle screen is our 24/7 channel. This is weather all the time, and we can show it to you on your cable providers. Tune in there. You'll get the latest forecast even when we're not on the air. Now, Eric right now is working on this PC. He's actually updating the discussion on our website as we speak. So there's constantly updates going on. As far as the actual forecast is concerned, we put it together with this clipboard right here. But if I went on television with just a clipboard in my hand, it'd get pretty boring pretty fast. So we utilize our MAX system to make our weather graphics, from radars, satellites, to the different forecasts that you see at home. That's an integral part of what we do. Moving down the line, Prism. Prism actually will send these graphics that we put together to our website, to the newspapers. The Carlisle Sentinel is one of them. If you've seen the 7-day forecast in the Sentinel, it's sent to them from this computer right here. That works its tail off even when we're not here. Moving down the line, Max 2. This is a backup system, but if you've ever seen our updates on the 24/7 channel, they're shot with just that little camera right there. That's an HD camera, kind of with a little fisheye lens, if you've ever seen those updates. Up here, we've got our radio broadcast. If we tap into some of the Cumulus radio stations around the region, we can give you the latest forecast there, as well as our emergency weather router. Tornado warnings. We go on the air. We can put ourselves on the air in a matter of seconds utilizing that equipment, something that's very useful to us when time is of the essence. Back here, a few other things. You never see this stuff on TV, but this is our 24/7 channel. This is how we update the graphics that you see on there. Right here, we update Twitter and Facebook with any sorts of warnings and information that you need, because of course social media is becoming all more important. So it's not just about what you see in front of the green screen, it's also about forecasting, and Brett's here now to talk about that.
Well, thanks, Ryan. Yeah, I'm back here at the weather wall, and when we come in to work for the start of our shifts, this is kind of home base for us. One of these computers, we actually sit down and actually make a forecast. We handwrite it here in the old clipboard, and we also make our graphics here using this computer. So this is home base for us, and I want to start by showing a little bit about how we forecast. So let me go over to the computer here, and we're going to take some of these images full screen. One of the first things that we do is we look at surface reports, surface observations from all around, not only Pennsylvania, but from all around New England. And so we have to really get into the current conditions here before we can actually determine what it's going to do. Let's roll the next clip. That's a surface map. This is what you see on the news, but we actually examine this before we go on the news to see what fronts are coming toward us, highs and lows, and things like that. So this is very critical before we even look at the models. And speaking of the models, this is what one of the forecast models actually looks like. It's part of the fun of our job. We actually get to look into the future and see what will happen. The areas of green and blue there you see our precipitation. Let's move on. This is what we call the E-wall from Penn State. This features various forecast models. So many models that we can pick and choose from. It might look like a foreign language to all of you at home, but that's what we use. Let's show another example of that. What we call MOS data. Just by looking at all of those numbers and letters on there, we can determine high and low temperatures, cloud cover, everything from wind speed and wind direction. Finally, sometimes we show this on the air as well. This is the upper air temperature pattern, and we use this to determine what it's going to do at the surface. So from a forecasting standpoint, we put it all together. The next graphic is a bar graph that actually shows what the models are spitting out in terms of precipitation. So, you know, this is all from our home base here, and this is what we do. We actually do our own forecasting, and then once we make the graphics here on this machine, then they're projected up onto that green screen, and that's kind of the big green monster, we call it, and that's where Ryan takes back over here, and he's going to show you a little behind the scenes look at that.
Yeah, it's complicated stuff, but now you've seen the Storm Track Center and how we put together the forecast. Coming up on Beyond the Forecast, we move about 15 feet over to here to show you this. I know, it may just be a big green wall, but it's an important part of our weather segments. And keep in mind, the season is young, but we've already felt our first taste of winter. The other half of our crew, Eric, is here with a look at winter storms that can bring some nasty travel conditions to central PA. But first, we'll be right back after this. Well, maybe this looks a little bit more familiar to you. This is what you probably see at home, right? Our weather graphics. We've got a forecast show up here. I can click through using my clicker to the various images, and you see the temperatures. At least they were current when we shot this. But as far as the green screen, the chroma wall, let me show you a little bit about what actually is behind me. You saw a little bit of it before we went to commercial break, but behind me is actually just a big green wall. We're seeing it on multiple cameras. We've got one over here, we've got one here. Inside of the actual camera in front of me that I'm talking into right now is a computer that allows us to take anything that's the color green and turn it into the weather graphics. Now, because of that, there's one thing you'll never see a meteorologist wear on television, and that's the color green. Because if we did, and let me grab a binder over here that's the color green, it would disappear. So we can't have anything green in our tie, in our shirts, whatever it may be, because it'll disappear. It doesn't even have to be the exact same color green. That's the story of the green screen you see behind me. Some stations have blue screens. It works pretty much the same way. But here is the view outside. In fact, you can see it a little bit in my tie, because I do have a little bit of green in my tie. So this is the green screen. Whenever we turn around to look at something, you don't see anything behind me. But the way we get around this is from our side camera here, if we can take that shot, there are monitors off to the side of me. So when I go to point at Pennsylvania on the map, well, Pennsylvania isn't behind me, but I see Pennsylvania in that side monitor over there. That allows us to both see what's going on at home, but also to tell you a little bit about what's going on at home and the forecast that we use. So I can keep clicking through graphics. We have the same thing on the other side of me, different monitors for different uses. I have a monitor right in front of me where I can see myself. It all kind of works together. We have somebody talking in my ear to tell me how much time I have left in this segment, and we're just about wrapping things up. In fact, I'm told we have about 50 15 seconds left, so here comes Brett just in time. He's got the same earpiece in.
That's right. They yell at me every morning, as you know.
You have to deal with that.
That's right. But this is what we certainly lovingly call home. So we've got a lot more ahead. And Ryan, coming up after the break, Eric Finkenreiter is here to talk about winter storms, how they form, and some of the most historic ones we've seen here in Central PA. Then Dan examines long-range forecast models. Stay with us. You're watching Beyond the Forecast.
All right, the behind-the-scenes part is over. Now we're suited back up.
Yes.
While Brett and I were showing you what goes on behind the cameras, the rest of the weather team, well, they were beginning to focus their attention to winter storms.
That's right. It's that time of the year. We can't have a show in December without talking about snow, Ryan, and we start by talking about historical snow and what storms are most common for the mid-state, what types of storms, and meteorologist Eric Finkenreiter has more.
Over the years, we've been hit with many types of winter storms, and quite often it's a mixture of rain, ice, and snow. But the all-snow events are the ones that we remember the most. Of those snow events, it really comes down to about 4 different types. Lake effect, the Alberta Clippers, and then 2 types of nor'easters, the Miller Type A and the Miller Type B nor'easter. I want to focus on lake effects first, since that is really what we experienced several times during the month of November. We get a front that moves through and gives us rainfall. In the wake of the rain, we get strong winds that drive south out of Canada, giving us that cold air over the open lake waters of Lake Erie. Here's a radar image, and a radar that's showing here of Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving in November, when areas in Mifflin, Juniata, and Northern Perry did pick up some lake effect snow from these streamers. We normally see lines of lake effect snow that develop. Now, these lake effect snow events can really reduce visibility in a hurry, and unfortunately, we've seen many fatal accidents along Interstate 80 to our north as a result of lake effect snow. The Alberta Clippers, these are very fast-moving systems. Quite often, we see these during the dead of winter, reinforcing the shot of Arctic air from Alberta, Canada. They're called Clippers because they are fast movers. However, they can produce some snowfall, several inches, and this is a ski lover's type of snow, very powdery. You don't necessarily need a shovel for these type of snow events, more of a leaf blower or even a broom to get rid of the snow off of the sidewalks. Now let's talk about those big historical types of snows, the nor'easters. The Miller Type A is more of a classic nor'easter that starts across the Gulf Coast or the East Coast, producing severe weather across the south, and then it must have that cold air to the north to produce all snow. Very tough to do quite often, but when it does, we can get some very heavy snow events. For example, the one here that we see March 12th through the 14th, 1993, where we had anywhere from 20 to 30 inches of snowfall across the state. I want to show you a clip here during that snowstorm of Interstate 81. Not 1, not 2, but 5 trucks trying to plow a lot of the snowfall along Interstate 81. Many businesses and schools were closed for an entire week. The interstates were closed as a result because they really had to remove a lot of the snowfall that took several days. Let's now talk about really the summary of the Miller Type A. It's known as the classic nor'easter, producing a very heavy, wet type of snowfall. Now, the second type of nor'easter originates across the middle of the nation, weakens as it does produce some moderate snow across the Midwest. But when it hits the East Coast, it redevelops and takes that more of a nor'easter pattern here and gives us once again another swath of heavy snow across the states moving into New England. This Miller Type B nor'easter, for example, what we see here in January 6th through the 8th, 1996, can still produce some very significant snow events here, where we saw anywhere from 20 to 30 inches of snowfall. This is not really your classic since it starts off across the middle of the nation, but once again, it can produce more of a widespread and uniform snow as it redevelops along the East Coast. We've seen many of them in the past, and Ryan, I'm sure we'll see more in the future. Back to you.
Well, thanks, Eric. With winter on the horizon, you often see us talk about winter storm warnings, watches, advisories. What does it all mean? Dan Tomaso sits down with meteorologists at the National Weather Service to explain. And then it's an in-depth look into long-range forecast models. Beyond the Forecast, bringing you the science and the story of weather since our start way back in 2012.
We're taking a break from Dan Gets Sciencey this time around to try and explain something that is always confusing to our viewers, the watch versus the warning.
Yeah, we see it every time a storm is heading our way. People confusing a watch with a warning, an advisory with a watch, a warning with an advisory. It all gets jumbled together. But there is an important difference. Dan Tomaso gets to the bottom of that explanation with the very people who issue the weather alerts, the National Weather Service and State College.
Winter weather can come in all forms in central PA, including freezing rain, sleet, and snow. Tracking and forecasting the storms that bring wintry precipitation is difficult, and keeping everyone up to date and safe is critical.
Here at the National Weather Service and State College, forecasters work 24/7 through the winter to keep us safe and tell us about winter storm watches and warnings.
Typically, we issue winter storm watches about 24 to 48 hours ahead of time, and our winter storm watch criteria is either 6 inches or more of snow expected in a 12-hour period, or a wintry mix of snow, sleet, and freezing rain. Once we get closer to the event and our confidence is higher, we would issue a winter storm warning, typically about 12 to 18 hours ahead of time.
If a winter storm warning is issued, driving and being out in the storm becomes very dangerous. It is not a weather bulletin to take lightly.
Once we're in the warning phase, you should be prepared at that point and get ready to either hunker down at home or take those precautions if you have to go out.
But Young stresses that even without a winter storm watch or warning, winter weather can still be dangerous.
We issue a lot of winter weather advisories, and a winter weather advisory just means we're not going to meet those strict wintertime criteria like a 6-inch snowfall. We may only get 2 or 3 inches of snow, but we may issue a winter weather advisory. And I'd just like to tell people out there that traveling, even in those advisory conditions, a few inches of snow or just a glazing of ice can make the roads treacherous and things like that. So don't take those advisories too lightly.
The next time you hear about winter weather bulletins on our weather broadcasts, over the radio, or on your phone, please take them seriously. While many of us enjoy the winter season, we also like to see everyone safe and sound.
Good information. Dan, after the break, more Beyond the Forecast with a look at long-range forecast models. Stay with us.
Well, every year around this time, you hear us talk about the winter weather forecast. How snowy will it be? How cold will it be? How do we come up with these forecasts, you might ask?
Yeah, here's the hint. It's not the Farmer's Almanac. We, along with climatologists, use long-range forecast models. Dan Tomaso looks into just how reliable they are and the science behind long-range forecasting.
Seasonal forecasting in many ways is an art form. No two forecasters go about it in the same way. Each year is another opportunity to learn about atmospheric patterns and what drives local weather. Many times, long-range forecasters hang their hat on oceanic temperature trends and their connections to local weather. This is why Paul Knight sees similarities between last winter and this upcoming winter.
The North Pacific is still cold. The Atlantic is still very warm. The ENSO, that is the El Nino Southern Oscillation, is giving us no message at all. So in one sense, we kind of would expect a relatively similar outcome. And I think that is where we're leaning right now.
Sea level pressure patterns can also tell us how strong the jet stream will be and how far south cold air can reach. This also affects how storm systems move and interact with cold air.
These things that you've probably heard about, the North Atlantic Oscillation, the Arctic Oscillation, these are measures of how wiggly the jet stream tends to be, whether there's big up and down or whether there's just generally a west-east flow. Of course, predicting a storm track, months in advance is virtually impossible. However, we know that a favorite time of the year for snow in Pennsylvania is either February or March.
And there's even more to consider. It is important to remember how the current pattern is playing out, or if other phenomena give insight to the coming season.
And those, in addition to some analogs, that is looking at, well, in previous years when it had been a relatively a wet fall in some parts of the country, what was the outcome, and things such as that. For example, even this year, a hurricane season that never got off the ground. So is that a predictor? All those seem to be pointing to the fact that that most of North America, at least the U.S. part of North America, will be milder than average.
Putting it all together, Paul Knight sees the winter playing out like this.
That for the most part, this winter will start on the mild side In fact, if anything, even milder than last winter. And as we get deeper into the winter, there's more likely to be opportunity for cold and snow to be occurring. Doesn't mean it won't snow in sometime in December and January, but I think that the deeper we get into winter, the more likely cold and snow will be impinging on Pennsylvania.
Similar to the past couple of winters, we can expect large temperature swings from December through March. This may increase chances of snow, but it could also bring us more mixed precipitation. One thing is certain, we do not see a brutally cold winter in store.
And I think that when we look back at things, we'll also say that, the beginning of the winter was kind of sputtering. It would get cold and then it would get mild again, it would get cold and mild again. And at the end of the winter is when we'll have opportunity for sustained chill. But once again, compared to the harsh winters of yesteryear, I don't see anything quite like that.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed this latest edition of Beyond the Forecast and a brief look behind the scenes here in our studios in Harrisburg. We're thankful to have all of this equipment at our disposal to help us provide you with the best forecast possible.
Yeah, whether our extensive network of live weather stations and cameras or the various workstations we use here in the Forecast Center to send out our forecasts to all sorts of platforms. As the saying goes, we are working for you.
And remember, if you missed any part of this show, it will re-air all week long on the Storm Track Center 24/7 channel. Tune in at 8 o'clock each night to catch an encore presentation of Beyond the Forecast behind the scenes. Check your local cable subscribers here for your channel listings. And if you don't get cable, you can always watch the Storm Track Center 24/7 channel live over the internet. All you have to do is click on Live Weather on our homepage.
And if you're hungry for more Beyond the Forecast, and who isn't, we're already working on our next show. Coming up in March 2014, we'll tackle some springtime topics in Beyond the Forecast Spring Ahead. That's coming in March.
And thank you for joining us.
Yeah, that's right. Have a great night and a happy holiday season as we wrap up 2013.